Welcome to the Common Man Football Show. My name is James Coburn, and today's episode we're going to be talking about Calvin Pryor, former New York Jets safety and former Cleveland Browns safety as well, due to being recently released by the Cleveland Browns due to allegedly getting into a fight with Ricardo Lewis. Now, I'm not here to talk about that situation, but what I am going to talk about is what Calvin Pryor looked like coming out of college, because he's one of those types of players that people got really excited about, started throwing all these crazy comparisons about, and ultimately didn't live up to those comparisons 100%, 3 years into his career, and now 4 years into his career. So I figured, let's get into his data, let's get into some of his information, and come to some sort of just so you know a little bit more information about him, and you can kind of see why people may have been freaking out about him a little bit too much in that draft. So terms and definitions will be in the description. So if you're not familiar with the work that I do, if you're new to the channel, just go to the description where terms and definitions are. So let's start with Calvin Pryor when it comes to his college production. Now, when it comes to his college production, he had an 85.73 solo tackle market share score, a 59.84 interception market share score, and a 63 pass deflection market share score. Based on this data since the 1989 NFL draft class, he pretty much does not hit All-Pro or Pro Bowl thresholds when it comes to Pro Bowl potential, particularly his pass deflection data. His solo tackle data is fine. He at least had Pro Bowl level solo tackle data. But he and All Pro as well. His interception data was about Pro Bowl level too, not All Pro, but definitely Pro Bowl level. But his pass deflection data, the ability to create pass breakups, that was the area of weakness when it comes to Calvin Pryor's data profile. So from the very get-go, his production profile did not look indicative of a multiple Pro Bowl or a multiple All-Pro type safety, or at the very least, he would have to become an outlier in order to become that type of player, because there's never been a guy with this kind of production profile to go on to become a multiple All-Pro / Pro Bowl player. And then when he gets to his athleticism data, this is where he looks a little bit better, but also still some concerns. He had a 64.60 explosive lower body strength score, 72.76 speed score, and 73.60 flexibility score. Based on the data, his explosiveness and his speed are good. He pretty much hits the Pro Bowl thresholds when it comes to explosiveness and speed. But again, he has an issue when it comes to his flexibility. Safety is one of those positions where short shell / three cone is very important. When it comes to high-quality safeties, as you can clearly see, the differences between an All-Pro safety and a Pro Bowl safety is really just how fast they run when it comes to just regular, normal, kind of overall safeties. And Calvin Pryor definitely had the explosiveness. He definitely had at least the speed indicative of a Pro Bowl player, but he did not have the flexibility traits of a Pro Bowl or All-Pro player. So taking this all together from a college perspective, coming out of college in that draft class, Calvin Pryor looks more like a potential starting safety. So he looks like a guy who could potentially become a long-term starter, but not a guy who is going to become a multiple All-Pro guy, not a guy who's going to become a multiple Pro Bowl guy. And that's because of, one, his pass deflection data, and also because of his flexibility data. He just didn't hit those minimum thresholds. And as a result, it clouds his ability to kind of hit those upper echelon limits of being elite. Because again, to be elite, you need to be elite in the data as well. I mean, these are data traits. These are traits like any other traits. And Calvin Pryor just did not quite hit that. Then when we look at his NFL production, he didn't actually do that poorly. I mean, some of the seasons were bad though. But 2014 was his rookie season. His total impact was only a 33.50 out of 100, and this includes his solo tackle, interception, and pass deflection data at the NFL level. 2015 wasn't that bad, though. 2015 had a 90-plus .40 total impact score. So in 2015, he actually had a top 12 to top 15 kind of performance as a safety that season in terms of his overall impact on the Jets. So he was pretty decent, at least above average in terms of his impact in 2015. So not that bad. Then 2016, impact overall just decreased tremendously when it comes to interception data, which was kind of the driving factor. And then he fell back down to about a top 50 to top 60 safety impact guy. So his NFL career has been inconsistent to say the least. Not having the greatest rookie season, coming in and having above average season in terms of being a top 10 to top 15 kind of finisher, and then going on and then having kind of a top 60 to top 50 season in 2016, and then of course he ended up on the Cleveland Browns, where he just got cut. So I don't think that Calvin Pryor is a guy that, now the whole character stuff and the getting into a fight and that's another thing entirely, and I'm not going to get into that because I'm not going to contribute anything to that information because I don't know Calvin Pryor. I've not interviewed Calvin Pryor. I haven't run a personality test with Calvin Pryor, so I'm not even going to speak to that. But what I would say is, just based on his physical ability, some of the stuff he's shown in college, he does look like a guy that could come in and become a long-term safety for an NFL team. He's shown enough potential. I think this is kind of why the Cleveland Browns traded for him, is because of that 2015 season. Because he at least showed in one season that he could have an above-average impact year. It's just that he's been really inconsistent. Based on the data out of college and his athleticism, he really just looks like a long-term starter, but that doesn't necessarily mean that he can't turn into, a middle-of-the-pack impact guy. That's sort of my thoughts on Calvin Pryor. The last sort of thing I wanted to hit on before I end the video out is, during the draft process, there was all these people that were comparing Calvin Pryor to Bob Sanders. Mike Mayock, I think, in particular, you could just Google Mike Mayock, Calvin Pryor, Bob Sanders, and you'll find multiple quotes of him saying that he basically thinks that Calvin Pryor is the next Bob Sanders, that he's bigger, like basically hyping him up like crazy. And I say this isn't hard, guys, in this tagline, because it really isn't. Whenever people make pro comps and comparisons, as a data guy, I like to make pro comparisons when there actually is some substance to those comparisons. And this is basically Bob Sanders versus Calvin Pryor. And Bob Sanders, in terms of his production and his athleticism, is on a different level than Calvin Pryor. It just is. He was significantly more explosive, significantly faster, significantly more flexible, had better pass deflection data, had better interception data. And again, this is just one of those things where pro comparisons, when people throw out pro comps and things for guys, a lot of times they're basing it on their opinion. I feel much more comfortable making a pro comparison when there actually is some data, some substance to back up that comparison. And I think Calvin Pryor is just a victim of being hyped up way too much. I just think it is, because he didn't have elite level safety athleticism. He didn't really have elite college production. He was just a guy who played kind of a weaker schedule than most, had a couple big games here and there, and people just ran with the Bob Sanders comparison because it just, that's what some NFL guys like to do. That's what some analysts like to do. They just like to go with the big sweeping comparisons because it gets a lot of clicks, it gets a lot of buzz, and also sometimes they really do believe that they think that this is the next whatever because they're basing it on what they've seen in the past and their experience. But I think when it comes to data, this is one of the big reasons why I preach that everybody should be using data, is because you'll be able to call people on claims that are not right. And I think when it comes to Calvin Pryor in that draft season, people got way too out of left field with him, and as a result, he's become a disappointment. I still think that he can become a long-term starter, However, he's not exactly a guy that I think you absolutely have to sign either, because of the inconsistencies in the NFL production. So again, of course, my name is James Coburn. You can find my other work at giraffecoburn.wordpress.com. You can also follow me on Twitter at Geometrics. And if you like this content and you want more content like this, be sure to leave a like and subscribe. Share this video as well with anybody that you know, and I'll talk to you guys in the next video. Peace.